Go ahead, Tamara.
Hey, Sheila, and hey, everybody at home joining us. Sorry, we're running a little bit late today, but getting some back end things sorted out. It's Friday, September 6th, and it has been a wild first week of September. There's so much happening politically, and if you're anyone who has children at home, kids are back to school, depending on which province and board you're with. So there's a lot to chat about. And so I'm joining you here in studio in Toronto at our world headquarters, and I'm joined by my lovely colleague and co-host and also main host, Sheila Gunn-Reid from Alberta. How's it going over there, Sheila?
Oh, we're in the middle of another heat wave, which means that they'll up the carbon tax again, but it's a great chance for us to take the crops off with some good weather for once. But yeah, it's been a wild week in politics. I think just largely in general, things are, oh, excuse me, there's a fly in my studio. I think things are, they're changing, but they're not changing. I think what we're going to get is more of the same from Jagmeet Singh, and we'll talk about that in a bit. But I thought since you are in studio and you can listen to Olivia directly, I thought that you would be the lead host today. So hopefully, I just sort of sprung that on you. It just sort of helps because I can't hear her unless I ask for her to talk to me. But maybe I'll tell everybody what we're doing today, and then maybe you can do the special message from our new sponsor, if that works for you.
Yes. Yeah. Let's get into it.
Okay. So this is the Rebel News Roundup. It used to be a weekly show. Now we're doing it 2 times a week. We'll see how that goes. Maybe we'll add more. Maybe we'll cut back. I don't know. The reviews are mixed. But it's a great place where we can talk about the news of the day, completely unscripted. But we also allow you to get involved in the show too. So if you are watching us on the censorship platform of YouTube, thanks for sticking it out over there. They definitely don't want your open minds over on YouTube. So if you are like me and you're slightly spite motivated, I realize why you're still there. And there are 1.6 million sets of eyeballs watching Rebel News over there. We don't want to abandon you. So that is why we continue to stream over there. However, if you want to switch your patronage over to a platform that supports free speech and supports creators' ability to speak their minds honestly and to allow the viewers to have their say, might I suggest you switch on over to Rumble. It's a great free speech platform. I don't really know what their political viewpoints are, except that they believe in freedom, and that's good enough for me. So we stream over there, and Rumble also allows you to do something else that you can no longer do on YouTube if you watch Rebel News, because we're demonetized over there. They had a little bit too much truth from us. Rumble allows something called a Rumble rant. It's their paid chat. If you leave us a Rumble rant, it helps support the network here, because we'll never take a penny from Justin Trudeau. How could we ever hold him to account if we did? But if your Rumble rant is over the $5 US arbitrary cutoff, we'll read it live on air. We'll do our best to address it, but don't let that be the bar for entry. Maybe you want to throw a couple of bucks our way. That's great too. And who knows, you might just hear your Rumble rant read on air. Anyway, so that's what we're doing here. We're going to watch some videos. We're going to discuss some articles. We're going to give you our hot takes, our spicy takes, and maybe even our cold takes. And that's it. I think I'll throw it back to my friend Tamara.
Yeah. So now that we have that housekeeping out of the way, we are trying to integrate some more ads into the live stream to help keep the lights on, fund our gear, and keep our operations afloat. And so one of those comes in the form of ad reads. And today I'm bringing you an ad read from Freedom Chat, which is a freedom, obviously, oriented chat platform. Now, first and foremost, a little bit of this is geared more toward our friendly neighbors down south in the United States. But regardless, I think this pertains to much of us in North America and in the world. So let me start off by asking you a question. How many of you are concerned that your privacy is being attacked by the radical left? The deep state, including the DOJ, is invading individuals' private messages and targeting them based on their political affiliation. That's why I've partnered with Freedom Chat, a private social messaging app that, like me, believes privacy is a fundamental human right. Freedom Chat offers true end-to-end encryption, built-in screenshot protection to ensure that no one can screenshot your conversations, no storage of messages on their servers, and no commercial use of user data. This is the app that I trust, and it's the app that my family and I rely on, especially as we approach the election. Some people will stop at nothing to maintain power, making privacy protection more important than ever. Download the app right now by going to freedomchat.com/rebel news. I'm such a fan of Freedom Chat that I have even created my own private channel, which you can subscribe to for exclusive content, including never before seen images, videos, and posts. Simply download the app, search for my channel, and subscribe. No one can see the channels you are subscribed to or the posts you react to. It's your own private news feed. If you are on Android, you can scan the QR code on your screen. You should be able to see it here, and subscribe to the waitlist or go to freedomchat.com. Speak freely and message privately with Freedom Chat. Again, download the app today and subscribe to our channel at Rebel News for exclusive posts and never before seen content. And there we have it. So without further ado, I think that we can get into our first topic, which is Sellout Singh, as he's been coined recently. He has been politically posturing himself this past week with, I think, very little strategy, actually. I'm not quite sure what the point of all of this has been, but nonetheless, we have a little clip here to share with you of Singh announcing that he is ripping up the unofficial supply and confidence agreement that basically maintained two fringe minority parties as though it were a democratically elected majority in the Canadian Parliament.
But it became very clear to me that Justin Trudeau is too beholden to corporate interests to go further, unwilling to stop big corporations that are ripping off Canadians. And so I've ripped up the supply and confidence agreement with Justin Trudeau. And we know that that makes the election timing more uncertain and frankly more likely. And we know that the next election is going to be about a choice, a very important choice for Canadians, between Pierre Poilievre, who wants to destroy our healthcare system, tear it down, or New Democrats who want to fix our healthcare system, build it up for people. That's an important choice, and that's the choice we're bringing to Canadians.
I find it kind of laughable that Singh even thinks he is on the radar to be any form of competition to Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives, who are leading with, I don't even know how many points at this point ahead of all of the other parties. But you know, this whole press conference was really just a campaign, a large campaign ad, in my opinion. It was just a way for Singh to try to play some political posturing and make it seem as though he was doing some sort of press release. A lot of us thought maybe, hey, he'll be calling a snap election by ripping up this agreement and stating hard fact, clear, not as mud as he's been, that they don't have confidence in this government, as the majority of Canadians don't, which, you know, Singh always claims to speak on behalf of and be acting in the best interests of. Sheila, I know that you have a lot of opinions on this one.
Oh, I'm full of opinions. I'm full of opinions. Here's what I think is happening here. Justin Trudeau is seeing that, or I'm sorry, Jagmeet Singh, but is there really a tangible difference? That's probably a bit of a Freudian slip there. Jagmeet Singh sees that Justin Trudeau's favorability is just plummeting. The more people get to know Pierre Poilievre, the more they are losing confidence in the media's reporting on Pierre Poilievre, as in he's not some far right radical. And he's just a normal dude who cares about affordability, accountability, small government, human rights. And the young people who are normally the far left of the Canadian electorate they are absolutely sick of Jagmeet Singh hitching his cart to a guy who's making those things that young people see their parents have completely out of reach. So the Liberals are plummeting in the polls. But normally, in other times, when the Liberals plummet in the polls, a lot of that support actually bleeds off to the left. That's not what's happening. Recent polling data from, I think it's Angus Reid, that has the NDP dropping too. So what that means is, and that those numbers, I'm sorry, are not manifesting in increases to the Green Party. They're not really manifesting in tangible increases to the Bloc, which would be the next logical trickle down. Jagmeet Singh is so bad that he's making young voters turn to conservatism. Like, he's creating conservatives out of socialists far before their time. Usually it's a time process. Buy a house, pay a few taxes, and you're like, dang, am I a conservative now? That's usually how it happens. Jagmeet Singh is so bad, and Justin Trudeau is so bad that it's happening sooner than expected in somebody's life. And so he's trying to cut his losses, but I think it's too little too late.
Well, and the longer this goes on, I mean, we're a year out from the formal, to be
right. So what's the point?
Election. And if Singh continues to drag this out for another year, I don't know how many times you can come to a quote unquote press release and say how disappointed you are in the government, and I am so upset, and we hear Canadians, and we're here to do what is in their best interests, and we can't believe that Trudeau acted XYZ. It's getting a little bit old and redundant. And if that's his plan for the next year, is to say, well, we ripped up the agreement and we're so disappointed, so an election could come sooner than later, but definitely in a year, is what I keep hearing from Singh and the NDP. And the media really pushed back this time. We actually had a media party that was there that was asking just yes or no, again, always yes or no question, that they're, let me be clear responses that aren't clear at all and don't actually answer definitively a yes or a no question. Do you have confidence in this government? Yes or no? And of course, Singh
I was going to put Olivia on the spot. Sorry to interrupt. There's that interview last night with Vashi Kapelos and Jagmeet Singh, where it did not go well for him. Even, when you've lost the mainstream media, that's bad. But as you say, like Jagmeet Singh says, well, I hope it's within a year. Well, yeah, you mean the statutory compulsory election date? Thanks, buddy. When he announced this, I predicted that instead of this being a formal, we'll support you every step of the way agreement now, it's going to be an a la carte agreement with the Liberals for every single vote that they will have to go to the NDP, get their support. They will indeed get their support, and then go on like that. So they've torn up the formal agreement, but are they going to actually vote against the Liberals and thus have the government fall in confidence? I don't think so. Let's show some of this interview with Vashi Kapelos, because it was really quite good.
Mr. Singh, in your video yesterday and in the comments you made today, you called the Liberals and the government more specifically weak and selfish. You said they've let Canadians down, they've abandoned Canadians, and that they have led to endless disappointment for Canadians. How can you ever support them going forward after saying that?
Well, we've torn up the agreement with Justin Trudeau. I've torn that up. And I know that means election is more likely than before. And it is really clear to me, there's mounting evidence that Justin Trudeau and the Liberals were just too weak to take on corporate greed. They were too beholden to corporate interests to stop big corporate grocery stores and corporate landlords from ripping people off.
But ripping up the agreement is just ending the formality of it. You explicitly said, for example, in that video, that you will continue to consider whether or not to support the government on matters of confidence on a case-by-case basis. Again, I'll put the question to you. You have told Canadians they are weak, they are selfish, that they have abandoned the very people who put them in office. You just described a host of reasons why you don't want to be a part of any formal agreement. How can you reconcile for Canadians watching now that you're still willing to vote with them and keep them in power on a case-by-case basis?
Well, I don't know what the votes are going to be. So we'll see what the vote is, and I'll make a decision based on what comes before me, using the lens of, is this in the best interest of Canadians? Depends on what the votes are and depends on what comes before us. But we know that this does certainly mean that an election is more likely.
I have to also ask you, Mr. Singh, why now? And in particular, you know, I've done so many interviews with you. I'm sure you're sick of them, where I ask you the question, like, this is the way in which you're describing the government. Why are you still keeping them in power? I don't understand what changed, you know, saliently over the last number of days or weeks that led you to make this decision now versus, let's say, 6 months ago. You point to corporate greed, for example, particularly in the grocery sector. Food prices were at their highest over a year ago, and the government wasn't doing much even then. Why didn't that force you to make this decision? Is this more about really polling and your electoral chances? And some would accuse in the Conservatives your pension.
Not at all. First of all, let's put that to rest. That's a lie by being propagated by Pierre Poilievre. But when it comes to decision, we always knew that at some point we would have to make this decision, that we weren't going to stay in this forever, and we would make that decision based on a whole host of factors. What we saw was that we got a lot of things done. We were able to get the dental care program out the door. Pharmacare steps have been passed in Parliament. So a lot of the work that we wanted to do is done. And it became very clear, more and more evidence mounted that the Liberals were simply too beholden to corporate interest.
What's the evidence? And again, with great respect, all of the stuff that you lay out, we have been talking about, you and I, you and other politicians. There has been accountability directed at the government and questions about why they aren't doing more on those issues that you talk about affordability, about grocery prices, about corporate interests for over a year. Like, it was particularly...
I mean, it's just comical, right? Like, she's actually doing a good job. She's saying, like, for over a year, you've been basically voting with the Liberals, then walking out into the halls of Parliament and then bad-mouthing them. So why are you doing this now? I don't know. Polling data?
Yeah, I was hoping it wouldn't be another year before journalists started to push back and also demand answers to these questions. I mean, the fact that politicians can continually evade these kinds of really basic questions and then gaslight both the reporter and Canadians in response when they say, well, maybe I haven't been explicitly clear, or let me make sure that I am very clear. I am so tired of hearing that, because what follows is not clarity. It's like we're being clear as mud continually, perpetually. And again, there is no accountability for that. And for Jagmeet Singh to claim that pharmacare and the dental bill stuff is done, I think it's in the very early stages. And what we're seeing is that these things aren't actually tangibly helping any Canadians other than a few very small sects. And even then, it's blunders, red tape, paperwork, having to advocate for yourself and navigate this bloated system that is completely ineffective and not up to speed with what you would expect from a government who is taxing you at a record rate that has outpaced the cost of every other necessity in your household since the 1960s. This is absolutely a crazy way that the government is conducting itself. Canadians are fed up. They've been fed up for a long time. And I think the majority of Canadians do not know how we're going to get through this next year with these fringe minority governments in power if it remains so. I hope that there is a no confidence vote, and we'll see if Singh, is a man of his word, which I highly doubt, but it would be a step in the right direction, I think, to correct this path of destruction that we're on.
Yeah, I think it's incumbent on the Conservatives to, it's complicated, but it's not all that complicated. I think a lot of times they don't teach this stuff in social studies. I think people need a bit of a civics lesson. But what needs to happen is the Conservatives have to attach a confidence motion to the most mediocre of votes in the House of Commons. And as soon as possible, when the House goes back to work, I think halfway through this month, they need to move on that right away. And they can show Canadians just how unserious Jagmeet Singh really is about tearing up that agreement with the Liberals, because if the Conservatives attach a confidence motion to like a boring, banal kind of vote. Everybody's got to be in the House of Commons to vote on it. And we'll see. We'll see how the NDP votes. Speaking of non-confidence, I'm not confident that the NDP are going to vote against the Liberals. Why? Well, we have a vote. We have a video for that. Jagmeet Singh won't commit to supporting a non-confidence motion if it's put forward by Poilievre's Conservatives. Let's show this video. What a liar.
Basically, if Pierre Poilievre moves a non-confidence motion, will you support it?
In terms of any motion moving forward, we're going to look at that motion before we decide. We're not going to presuppose an outcome of that. But I've ripped up the agreement with Justin Trudeau. And I know that means that an election has now become more likely. We are ready to fight an election whenever that happens. And when that election comes, the choice is going to be between Pierre Poilievre and conservative cuts who want to literally destroy our healthcare system. Want to make it so that the only way you can get care is if you can afford to pay for it out of pocket.
Basically, if Pierre...
That's the only way to get care now, by the way, is if you can afford to go to the United States. Like, just to be clear, I'm not in favor of their pharmacare plan and their dental care plan. What I want from the government is actually none of that stuff. I want them to quit taxing me to death and wasting my money so that I have more money in my pocket and less inflation picking my pocket all the time so that I can buy those things for myself when I need them.
Exactly. If we had a public sector and public health care that actually worked, and we had the ability to go elsewhere for healthcare if the desire is there, then that actually alleviates the strain on the public system that is burdened with wait times and endless bureaucracy to try to navigate to get anywhere with anything. You have your family doctors acting as gatekeepers who are also
if you can get a family doctor, because that's almost impossible.
And they're too suffering the destructive fallout of this government's actions and its failed policy initiatives. Doctors, nurses, people in the medical professional are fleeing in record numbers. They're going to America. They're going to Florida. They're going to states and places where they can practice medicine more freely and actually in a lucrative manner. There is so much red tape and bureaucracy here that's bloating, I think, as of last year, so probably more at this point, 3 times faster than the private sector, that people are done. They no longer want to take part in this system, and they're leaving. They're flocking in record numbers. We can see the numbers from StatsCan, especially in Ontario. There has been record migration out of Ontario, primarily to Alberta, but also elsewhere in the world in the last few years. We have our first super chat here from Ryerson Gary. Thank you very much. He gives $5. Sorry, Gary, I assumed your gender there. Jagmeet doesn't like the CEOs. If Jagmeet were ever asked how many paychecks and or total taxes that Galen Weston is responsible for, he wouldn't know, simply because he probably can't count that high. Oh, Jagmeet. He doesn't...
he sure hates the corporations except when his brother lobbies for them. That was one of the biggest scandals that I don't think he got enough heat over. He was out there attacking Loblaws so much that I actually felt sorry for the Westons. And that is a damn near impossibility. But he was going after Loblaw for having profits during, an economic downturn and an inflationary crisis. He accused them of price gouging. Loblaw, I'm a grocery professional. Loblaw is one of the cheapest places to shop, especially if you shop their yellow box line. And that's what Loblaw did. They ramped up their no-name stuff because people were looking for a more affordable product. And guess what? People started shopping more at Loblaw than at the other places that didn't tweak to meet the consumer needs. Well, he was running his mouth about Loblaw, but his brother is a lobbyist for Metro, one of the main competitors of Loblaw. And he never got any heat over that. Just a little bit from the Conservatives, but not enough from the media, because the media doesn't do their job in this country. We are way behind. I feel like I'm with talking to David Menzies, and I'm very sorry about making that comparison, Tamara. Let's hear from the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada, Pierre Poilievre, about Singh and his fake performative, like, I'm tearing this up, I'm breaking up with you, Justin Trudeau. So prove it, buddy. Put your money where your mouth is. Let's hear from Poilievre.
And now, sellout Singh has pulled a stunt. The sellout Singh stunt today, where he came out and claimed that he was wrong, that the coalition was a bad, costly idea, but he refuses to commit to voting for a carbon tax election. So my message to sellout Singh is this: if you're serious about ending your costly carbon tax coalition with Trudeau, then commit today to voting for a carbon tax election at the earliest confidence vote in the House of Commons. That way we can have a carbon tax election where Canadians will decide between the costly coalition of Trudeau and sellout Singh that tax your food, punish your work, take your money, double your housing costs, and unleash crime and drugs on your street, or common sense Conservatives who will axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime.
That's what Canadians are waiting for, is it's the carbon tax election, as it's been coined by Poilievre, but there are so many things, as he mentions there, that are top of mind for Canadians, that they are reeling with, that they're seeing, they're feeling in their pocketbooks, and they're seeing on the streets. And if we have to wait another year with this kind of destruction, I mean, Canada in some ways is already unrecognizable in some of the sections of freedom that we thought that we had. What is another year of this weird, as I've said already, fringe minority coalition going to do to the country? And then you have Trudeau coming in, and of course he says, oh, well, we're too focused on doing all of these things that are so great for Canadians, which I don't know what any of them are. I don't think any Canadians do. And he claims that Jagmeet's just playing politics, which I would agree, but it's also inherently political to state that you're acting on the best interests of Canadians. That's the whole point of policy and politics. So the whole thing just doesn't really make sense. And then, of course, I'm not sure if we were supposed to talk about this later or not, but his left-hand man broke up with him too. So he has a couple of breakups in his midst. I mean, other than his wife leaving him several months ago, now he has this breakup with Singh, and his campaign director has also left Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's side.
Jeremy Broadhurst.
Yes.
He came onto my radar during the Foreign Interference Commission as somebody who didn't seem to care when he was being told by security officials that, hey, they're targeting the Conservatives. You guys should consider doing something about it. And he was like, I guess that's the Conservatives' problem. That's how I know Jeremy Broadhurst, as someone who will do anything to get his guy elected, even if it means compromising the sovereignty of our elections. That's the kind of dude Jeremy Broadhurst is. And yet he is breaking up with Justin Trudeau. So all the little rats fleeing that sinking ship.
That's right. Yeah. And if there's an election anytime soon, this is not a good situation for Justin Trudeau. Leaves him without his campaign director. As I said, he has Katie Telford still on the right hand, and then your campaign director on the left hand has broken up with you, just as your buddy in the NDP breaks up with you. This is not okay times for Justin Trudeau. He has to be feeling this heat. But anyway, we have this video here to share of him, and he likes to make it seem, he's a drama teacher, so he's good at acting. Right. So I think he likes to make it seem like he's not squirming, but I don't know how he couldn't be.
An election will come in the coming year, hopefully not till next fall. because in the meantime, we're going to deliver for Canadians. And the contrast with a Conservative leader that wants to cut dental care, cut the school food program, cut insulin for through pharmacare, cut the programs that Canadians are relying on to help them through this difficult time. Well, that'll be a political decision that Canadians get to take in an election. But in the meantime, I'm not letting down Canadians, and I'm going to stay focused on them.
I don't actually know if Pierre Poilievre has ever said that he's going to cut the pharmacare program. He's not, I don't think Pierre Poilievre is concerning himself with the insulin being given to diabetics. I think he's concerned with the fentanyl being given to drug addicts. I think that's where his mind is at.
And minors. The underage children who are falling into this very sad, destructive death path thanks to the Liberals' $1 billion, might I add, Canadian drug and substance strategy that basically just allows drugs into the hands of anyone through various means like vending machines out in British Columbia. I think we have to run through a quick ad and try to catch up here. So let's get to that.
Yeah.
It's the news event of the year. Canada's most controversial premier sits down with Canada's most controversial journalist, and everything is on the table. Come watch Ezra Levant one-on-one with Alberta Premier Danielle Smith in front of a live studio audience in Calgary. Nothing's off limits. Nothing's held back. Questions that would make Justin Trudeau invoke martial law. Answers that will make Stephen Guilbeault pee his pants. You're not going to want to miss this one, but you have to be there in person at the Rebel News Live mega conference in Calgary on October the 5th. Tickets are limited, so drop everything and go to rebelnewslive.com right now. Special discounted prices for Patriots and special extra high prices if you're with the CBC. Go to rebelnewslive.com now. Securing Danielle Smith for that one was such a great person to have coming out. I'm so excited for that event on October the 5th. If you're in the area, or even if you want to pay to fly in, I think that it's going to be a very worthwhile discussion and time. We have a super chat here, another one from Ryerson Gary, gives another $5. Thank you. If anyone has a doubt that Justin's sole goal in life is to destroy everything Canadian, all you have to do is look at his stacked Senate. It could be 2 generations before all his abuse can be undone. Yeah, that's a very good point. And we launched a campaign at NotMySenator. 2 campaigns. Yeah. .ca.com. I'm terrible at remembering.
I think it's notmysenator.ca and senatorsellout.com. So Senator Sellout is for Charles Adler, who is still out there presenting himself as a conservative to the CBC, even though he has been a Trudeau fanboy since early 2020, because the bailout to the media happened in late 2019, and he did not want to be just another chorus layoff. So he has been a money follower since a long time ago, and so he quickly switched his political allegiances while lying to his, lying is a strong word, lying by omission to his viewers, not divulging that his Trudeau sycophancy had something to do with the application he made to the Senate. So you can sign that at senatorsellout.com, and notmysenator.ca is for Christopher Wells, the radical sex activist from Alberta, who has been nothing but an anti-Christian, anti-parent bigot, undermining parents and the democratically elected government here in Alberta, who has taken a strong stance for parents' rights against these sex radicals in the classroom. And Trudeau did it as a slap in the face to Premier Danielle Smith, who has come out against medical transition for children, men playing in women's sports, and keeping secrets from parents at school when, some radical sex activist convinces your child to use different pronouns. The law will be as such that parents should know. Chris Wells was behind the former policies. Justin Trudeau has appointed him as a stick in the eye to our premier, who has been his strongest opposition in 9 years. So anyways,
claiming
you can sign
that this
petitions.
Is on behalf of Canadians and for their best interests, and he's listening to you.
Oh, yes. And I should also note that he's not listening to Albertans because we elect our senators. We call them senators in waiting. We cast a ballot for them. And the convention is that the prime minister of the day appoints our senators that we have chosen. It's our way of doing this without opening up the Constitution, which is a big mess. So we did it our own way. And the other prime ministers have respected us, but not Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, not even for a second. So that's the context.
Speaking of the state of the Senate and the stranglehold that the fallout of the Liberal government will continue to have on it, as Ryerson Gary here mentions, could be at least 2 generations, decades. The state of Canada is abysmal,
it's a mess,
in my opinion. It is absolutely abysmal. And we have been featuring that at our website, fixourcities.com, which is dedicated to reporting on the disturbing and disgusting display of squalor and really like third world living conditions that are being endured by individuals in our streets due to, again, the failed radical destructive policies being implemented by all and various levels of government over the last several years. The first video here we have, I'm not sure, I think we have a social clip that just went up today on X, formerly Twitter, about the report that I just did earlier, that went out last night actually, but it was filmed on Friday, right before the long weekend. And I headed into Cobourg's encampment. So Cobourg is a once sleepy, very idyllic small town about 100 kilometers east of Toronto along the 401 corridor. And cameraman Lincoln J and I went into the belly of the beast. We were right in with the encampment. You can see here in this video, we spoke to the encampment residents. We spoke to the local residents downtown on the streets of downtown Cobourg. And we also were able to speak to one town councillor, Adam Bureau, about the state of affairs in that town. So I think we have a small little clip here that we can share with you if you haven't seen this report yet.
Yeah, the Drug Overdose Awareness Day is tomorrow, but they've crossed it out and put drug poisoning.
Yeah, they call it drug poisoning now.
Okay. Do you think that's accurate? Drug poisoning versus overdose? Like, aren't all drugs poisonous?
Yeah, but we call alcohol poisoning.
So it's leaning on that.
Yeah.
This is actually a decent setup.
That's my fertility log.
Are you trying? Or?
No, I just like the way it looks. So,
what do you think's going to happen come the winter? Is this appropriate, and will it keep you warm?
We stayed in here through the winter already.
Oh, you were here.
We have heaters as well, like propane heaters. I don't know. There's just some people aren't really sensitive to the fact that this is all the things that we have. And when you leave it out for people to just steal from you, like, that's why I don't want to go to transition house, because they'll think of any reason to kick me out.
And a message to the kids: don't do drugs. And that's all I want to say.
So the encampment situation in Cobourg is out of control, and it has been strategically placed there on this provincial property that's owned by Infrastructure Ontario. And you saw in the video, and it's a full 17-minute video, so I would welcome anyone to go and check out the full report, because obviously that is just a very small tidbit of everything that was said. And there are some damning allegations in there about the failures of the service provider, which has a sole source contract with the upper tier municipality called Northumberland County to deliver homelessness and social services to people in the encampment, for instance, and others who are homeless or suffering drug addiction and other mental illness or mental health woes. And the repeated theme that we heard on the ground there, both from local residents who have not been given transparent decision-making details about the acquisition of this one particular building to the tune of $2.3 million, without a plan in place on how services will be developed and or delivered, how the building will be renovated, structured, the whole thing is just a massive mess, and there's way too much for me to cover in the few minutes that we have here. But there's been a series of reports on what's happening in Cobourg and elsewhere, again at that website, fixourcities.com. And there is a real issue with drug abuse, addiction, and overdose. And the fact that they're not calling overdoses anymore is because there's this stigma, so they like to say, that overdose means death. So automatically when you think of an overdose, you think of death. But now we have Big Pharma to thank for not only causing the opioid crisis and downplaying the addictive nature of opioids beginning in the mid-90s to now, but now the same pharma has swooped in with naloxone to save the day. So the majority of people who are overdosing are able to be saved to go on another day to overdose again tomorrow because of the advent of naloxone. And so as a result of those savings, and I would say the prolongation of suffering of these individuals at the hands of a drug demon, is that we're changing the language around overdose to be drug poisoning. And it's very clear that there are underlying mental health issues and also drug addiction issues, and whether or not those two are intertwined together to create a ripe environment for homelessness is a broader discussion. But these advocates that come in, the radical harm reduction, safe supply advocates that think that perpetuating this situation is somehow compassionate, you can see for yourself in that video that the way these people are living, maybe, you know, it looks like a decent setup with their structures kind of haphazardly built and they can survive in the winter. But having Canadians living as though they're in a third world refugee camp is not the Canada that I think Justin Trudeau somehow in his distorted view of reality thinks is helping anyone. It's creating chaos on our streets. It's creating safety concerns for children just trying to walk to school on a day-to-day basis or going home for lunch and having to walk by this squalor and open-air drug use and violence and crime. And this is a larger issue. It's also happening. Alexa Lavoie, our Quebec correspondent, shared, I believe it was in Montreal the same day, the absolute squalor that you are seeing in these encampment situations. And there are so many individuals in there that need so much support and help to simply be able to live some form of normal life. The effects of prolonged, and I'm talking, you know, years and even decades of drug use, the effects that it has on its brain, something that I've just recently come to learn, is that it causes such cognitive deficit in the individuals who have been, you know, battling with these demons, that they are actually unable to advocate for themselves. They cannot live a normal life on their own independently. They need extra help and support. And this is obviously not compassionate. I mean, look at the video here. They're living in that.
Is this Cobourg?
No, this is Montreal, I believe. This is Alexa's video. But Cobourg, the thing is that these advocates come in and they will do a clean sweep of the area so that it maintains a semblance of cleanliness. But in fact, if the encampment residents were left to their own devices, it would look similar. And also the province, because the property is owned by Infrastructure Ontario, and they have been, in my opinion, strategically placed there by certain advocates who also work at the legal center of Northumberland County, which is a massive conflict of interest. The province comes in and hires third-party cleaners to come in and clean the site because it turns into a sanitary and public health issue with vermin and feces and the disease and the destruction to the property. That's why there's security there. We talked to the security in the video. They confirm that they have fenced off that property and they've been hired by the province, which is at your taxpayer expense, every single day, 24/7, to monitor that property for security reasons. So this is a massive burden to the taxpayer, the local residents, and it's not helping anyone get out of this perpetual cycle.
Just for context, how many people live in Cobourg?
there's about 20,000 population,
Oh
and
my
I would
gosh.
say in the Northumberland County as a whole, the catchment upper tier municipality is about 80,000, but all of this falls on the backs of 20,000 residents in the town of Cobourg.
Yeah. Okay, so that just put that in incredible context for me, because that is basically my closest town, what I would call my hometown. I was born there in the hospital of Fort Saskatchewan. It's like 18 to 20,000 people, idyllic, sweet, nice neighborhoods, much like Cobourg. You know, I see Cobourg has the same historic downtown that Fort Saskatchewan has, in a larger county of about 100,000. And we don't have that problem in my hometown. And there's a reason for that. Our premier has taken a completely different approach to this. And because of that, our overdoses year over year have fallen by half. We're ramping up treatment beds in this province. We're not waiting on the feds to do something about it. The province has said that even though First Nations healthcare is a federal obligation, instead of waiting for Indigenous people to die on reserve of drug overdoses, they're putting treatment facilities on reserve at the expense of the Alberta taxpayer, because these lives are important, and we can't wait around for Justin Trudeau to do something, because he's never gonna. He's happy with the pills and the fentanyl just killing the young people in this country. It really is a tale of two cities, right? Like Fort Saskatchewan versus Cobourg, where we have almost zero tolerance for any of this, and our province taking a different approach.
I contrast that in the report, because the Globe and Mail, I believe it was 2 weeks ago now, reported that 55% drop in overdose deaths in Alberta year over year from May last year to now. And I contrast that with the local health unit, which at the same time was putting out an alert for a rise in overdoses, or they're calling them, suspected drug poisonings in the area. Those are overdoses. Let's call it for what it is. And if it wasn't for Narcan, those would be overdose deaths. And so when we reduce the stigma and we talk about it in this light, fluffy way, then people aren't getting the shame that they need in order to go out and seek treatment and help and become contributing members of a functioning society. And those that can't, that cognitively have been debilitated by the decades of drug use, then there needs to be some sort of support put in place for them, because leaving them to their own devices out on the streets is what's bringing us here. And it's its own public health crisis that results in disease, vermin, and other issues on the streets that aren't just affecting that one individual anymore. It has that ricochet effect out to the community, the neighborhood, their families, the children, the elderly, public safety. The whole thing is a big mess. And then meanwhile, we have Canadian bureaucrats out protesting, and as Harrison Faulkner puts it in his post on X, having a meltdown over being forced back to work 3 days out of the week, because they're currently mandated to be there 2 days a week. So really this is over one extra day of being in the office. And they're calling this the most anti-worker policies that they have ever seen. And I think like draconian, and they're using all of these very powerful, strong words.
I'd get real anti-worker with these people, but we'll save my opinions for after the video.
Yeah, have a look at this.
Fight to win!
An unusually outspoken Ottawa as public servants push back.
We're seeing these unions coming together, maybe for the first time ever, in the biggest way ever, to fight one of the most anti-worker policies that we've ever seen.
The new policy, most federal government employees will have to work an additional day a week in the office, now up to 3 days of their own choosing, starting next week.
During the pandemic, we saw an increase in productivity and work-life balance because parents were able to cover off their childcare responsibilities. They didn't have to pay for childcare before and after work.
And it's not just work-life balance. Civil servants say they're more productive at home compared to being in the office, where they now often don't have their own workspace.
I spend most of my job on team and on team meeting, and there's no real plus value for me to go back to the office.
But unfortunately for the union members, it's the employer, the federal government, who has the legal right to determine where work is done.
I'll bet you every employee would say they'd love to have the right to choose. But just because that's a preference doesn't mean it becomes an entitlement.
Yeah, solidarity hot dog.
Remote work was a central issue in last year's public servant strike, but unions were unable to get work from home language in the collective agreement.
They say, it's not a collective agreement. Well, what do you think is going to happen next time? We're going to put it in the darn collective agreement.
The Privy Council office, who made no one available for an interview, says workers need to come back to provide better services for Canadians and build a stronger work culture, but both the feds and the unions have no hard proof to support their arguments. Mackenzie Gray, Global News.
You know, it's so funny to see that language right there at the end changing and actually, you know, saying who made no one available instead of the usual, no one at the Privy Council was available at the time of this interview. But yeah, it's interesting to see the media maybe changing their tune a little bit and putting the pressure back on the government to have that accountability. I mean, that's the entire basis of a functioning democracy, is to have a free and independent media who can ask those questions. But back to these melting down bureaucrats, I can't imagine the privilege it must be to get so worked up over having to be in the office an extra day of the week to serve Canadians.
Yeah, I'm not one to, look, I work from home, but I make it a point, as you know, to be in my desk, ready to go, Zoom camera flipped on or Skype camera flipped on so that everybody in the company can see that I'm sitting at my desk ready to go. Because even though I work from home, I take it seriously. But these people are federal bureaucrats. They currently only work from home, or they work from the office 2 days per week. Mm-hmm. The extra day is going to kill these people. They say this is anti-worker legislation. I would get real anti-worker with them, as in I would fire them all and hire people who would go into the office 5 days a week, happily. Why? Because unemployment is up in this country. Way up. The numbers just came out today. It's at its highest it's been in 7 years outside of a pandemic. There are a lot of people who want those jobs and who would willingly skip into the office every single day to work 5 days a week in a desk so that they earned an honest day's wage to pay for their families. And these people are already paid too much. They already have too many benefits in the public sector. It's all done on the back of other working people. So this is crazy. I would be full Ronald Reagan with the air traffic controllers. Fire them all. Just fire them all. Bring in new people. Because it's crazy. It's not anti-worker to ask the worker to show up for the job they're paid for. But that's where we are with these people. The public sector in Ottawa continues to be and I know there are good exceptions in there, and I get your emails, I promise you, some of the laziest, most boring people on the face of the earth. They were the biggest drivers of the anti-convoy outrage because the horn honking stopped them from sitting in their pajamas, working on their laptop from home. I bet it would have been more quiet in the office. You should have went to the office, but here we are.
Yep, the laptop class telling you that it's the most anti-worker policy in history to simply be called back to work one extra day a week. That's where we are in Canada. Well, other people live in squalor as though they are living in a third world refugee camp. Okay, let's go to one more ad break and we'll come back and run through the last few minutes of
breeze through it. Yeah.
Our topics. Yes.
When the panel said, listen, give it to 6-month-old babies with zero assurances this possibly would be safe. I said, where were you the day when the WHO came out and said, do not use remdesivir in the hospital? I'm Dr. Peter McCullough. Join me for an evening together. Tickets are on sale now.
Why should you join Canada's National Firearms Association? We currently have one of the most aggressively anti-firearm governments in our nation's history, promoting fear and placing blame like never before. Our rights, freedoms, culture, and heritage, it's all on the line. But we are fighting back, and there is strength in numbers. We work within the law to change the law, to defend competitors, hunters, collectors, and other law-abiding firearms owners. We can get through this. We've done it before, and we'll do it again, if you are with us. Canada's National Firearms Association. Freedom, safety, responsibility.
All right. I'm just going to breeze through some additional messages from our advertisers there, and I know we need to tighten up the show because you have to go to TACCOM right now. Which
So
I'm super
excited.
I'm jealous. So Dr. Peter McCullough, he's speaking at Canada Christian College in Whitby on Saturday, September 14th. If you haven't seen him speak, I've actually gone to this very similar event in Red Deer, and it is phenomenal, and it was put on by Canadians for Truth. It's an all-day event. It'll feature speeches and a Q&A with Dr. Peter McCullough and special guests Regina Wattil, Dr. Trozzi, hockey legend Theo Fleury, and Saskatchewan businessman Joseph Borgo. And I just love saying his name. It's so fun. They'll host the show. Get your tickets at canadiansfortruth.ca/events. And with regard to TACCOM 2024 is Canada's largest gun show. It starts today at the International Centre in Mississauga, Ontario, and I could not be more envious of my friend Tamara, who gets to go. From September 6th to 8th, you can check out the best in tactical and competitive shooting products and see top firearms manufacturers and distributors from Canada, the USA, and Europe, and all that they have to offer. A new feature this year is the cash and carry deals on firearms and ammunition, allowing visitors to purchase directly at the show, provided they have, of course, a valid firearms license. So that's your PAL or your RPAL, depending on what you want to take home. Tickets are available at the door or online at taccomcanada.com. Jealous. Very jealous.
I'm very excited to head over there. It'll be my first time covering TACCOM, I think, since 2020 when we did the gun rally, similar vein in Ottawa.
Yes. Yeah, that was fun. That was
Yeah,
fun.
it's
You'll
first
leave
time.
there wanting to get your license.
Well, my husband has his, so I'm not sure now, given that my job, you never know what they're going to flag on people. I've heard they've really cracked down the last few years over, and especially over people's stances if they have expressed anti-government sentiment online. Watch out, online harms bill. We have a super chat from Ryerson Gary, and then we'll just kick into, I think, one last headline before you wrap things up. Another $5, thank you. Never forget the primary reason from day one for unionism is to prevent the 80% of qualified persons from doing an equal or better job for the same or less money. Yeah, the unions are a whole other thing. Whole other monopoly on workers' rights, which I think would just serve their own best interests.
They really screwed themselves over the pandemic, didn't they? People who had previously been like dyed-in-the-wool NDP unionists realized that, hey, your union doesn't have your back if you want to try the granola route with your own health. And a lot of those people are now baby conservatives. So as long as the unions keep being terrible, we'll just keep getting conservatives coming over to our side. We just have to show those people grace because they're learning how to care about freedom, and we can't run them off because they weren't one of us in previous years. We have to teach them and show them some kindness.
If Fred Hahn is any indication of the state of unions in Canada, I think it speaks for itself.
Yes. You know what? Right to work legislation is a great thing, and there's a reason unions oppose it. If you made union membership voluntary, no one would join, and they know it. Anyway, let's go into our last a little bit.
Yes.
Tamara, I'll let you lead.
All right. So our first one comes, well, I think this will be the only one that we run through just so that we can wrap up and get to the rest of the day. Here, the Globe and Mail, Ottawa warned release of names of Nazi war criminals who settled in Canada could help Russia. And of course, my link here has gone wonky. Sheila, do you have this pulled up that you could highlight some of the other parts of the article?
I don't. Maybe if Olivia can scroll down, we could just read it as we go. Okay, so Russian propaganda in the war. See, this is the same baloney that they use. Here's why I think the feds don't want to release this. Because you know whose name might be on the list? Chrystia Freeland's dad. Or Yaroslav Hunka, the guy they applauded in the House of Commons. He might actually be on this list. And so this list, if it were released, would be very embarrassing to the Liberals. But they're using the same thing. If we release the names of Nazi war criminals who fought against the Russians because the Russians were on our side in World War II, it would be helpful to the Russian efforts in Ukraine. I'm not sure how one squares that circle, but the Liberals are trying it out because I think some names on that list would be deeply embarrassing to them. And this whole idea about talking about people who aided and abetted the Nazis as some sort of way to help Russians, that's the same thing that they used to try to shut everybody up when they were talking about Chrystia Freeland's grandfather, who was an actual Nazi propagandist and Nazi collaborator. And when that was uncovered, and there's archival evidence, it's in the Alberta archives, in fact, our government archives, his role in aiding and abetting the Nazis and publishing propaganda materials on behalf of the Nazis. She said, "Oh, how dare you? That all you're trying to do is discredit me because I'm such a critic of the Russian incursion into Ukraine," when it was just people talking about history. So I don't know. I think the list is probably going to hurt the Liberals. I really do.
And it makes me wonder if the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. But thank you. I was able to get the article pulled up. So yeah, they're worried. The Liberals are worried that somehow releasing these documents and the names of 900 alleged war criminals who came to Canada after the Second World War, including members. Here it is, including members of the Ukrainian SS division.
Yes. Guess who that is? That's Yaroslav Hunka.
Who we applauded in the House of Commons last year. Standing ovation. Applause.
Standing ovation, because for the idiot trained seals in the House of Commons, Russia is the ultimate evil. And so being a Nazi is okay as long as you are against Putin.
And so releasing this has the federal government, they're being warned, but also obviously we suspect they're also squirming because this will propagate Russian propaganda in the war against Ukraine. It could get a boost in propaganda for simply releasing the names of Nazi war criminals, 900 of them, that settled here in Canada and perhaps went on to be part of our government.
Yeah, those old, if there are any of them still alive, they should not be allowed to live in obscurity and peace. They're propagators of one of the greatest evils ever perpetrated on humankind. And they should not be allowed to just live out their golden years, gobbling up all of our social safety net, living long and fruitful lives in the safety and security of Canada. I would love to know where they are. I would absolutely love to know where they are. And I think, of course, CSIS does. I mean, they have a list, but we're not going to know because I think that Chrystia Freeland's grandfather is probably on it and Yaroslav Hunka's on it.
And so the Globe and Mail has actually filed access to information requests to try to obtain some of these documents. But of course, the publication of the secret list is being opposed by some groups and individuals consulted by the government who fear it could fuel Russian President Vladimir Putin's claim that the invasion of Ukraine amounts to a purge of Nazis.
How does one have anything to do with the other?
Well, unless that's accurate.
Well,
unless Vladimir Putin's claim is accurate, and instead of calling it Russian propaganda, it turns out to be based in fact, apparently these secret lists would somehow confirm or deny that.
Unless these guys are all living they can at least release the names of the dead on the list. Right? I think under privacy laws, it probably could. I think your right to privacy does not extend after your death. Does that work? I don't know.
Yeah, or
I just get
perhaps
redacted
the living
all the
family
time.
members. Like I note that Hunka's, I think it was his son or perhaps his grandson, is ahead of one of our largest hospitals in Ontario. Can't recall his name, but at the time I looked into it.
Martin Hunka, that's his son.
Yeah, and he's high up in one of the hospitals, and so you're never quite sure the history of some of these individuals when they come from someone of that magnitude and what morals and values and things were being instilled into them to go up into various levels of these higher positions.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that did happen. I'm not saying it hasn't happened, but I think Canadians should be able to see the list, see if their friends and neighbors are on that list. Maybe. I'd like to know if I was living next door to a Nazi war criminal. I don't know about you.
Well, the Globe and Mail contacted a Holocaust survivor from the Netherlands who currently lives in Ontario. They told the Globe and Mail in a statement that the thought of Nazi war criminals who were involved in the murder of my family members living in this country is absolutely horrifying to me. If this is the case, I believe that I have the right to know. And I think most Canadians would agree with that.
I think of all people who should know, it's that person. Is that it? Are we good? We're all caught up? Tamara can run off to TACCOM and send me pictures and make me green with envy.
I'll get some selfies for you.
Why
all right.
like
well,
that?
thank you everybody for joining us at home. And we will be back here for the time being on Monday with your usual hosts, probably David Menzies and Sheila Gunn-Reid. And same time and place, 1 to 2 p.m. Eastern. So have a great weekend. If you're heading out to TACCOM, maybe I will see you there. If not today, then hopefully you have a great time there. And hopefully we'll see you also next weekend at the Peter McCullough event at the Canadian Christian College or in October for Rebel News Live. So many opportunities to meet and mingle in person. I love it. All right, without further ado, thanks everybody. And to lean on David Menzies, stay safe and stay sane.
Hi, everybody. As you know, every year we do a fundraiser for Rebel News that's super fun. It's a Rebel News cruise. We all go on a cruise ship together. We have dinner with each other. We have seminars when the ship's at sea, like Q&A sessions. And the rest of the time is your own. It's a vacation. It's a way to connect with other Rebel News enthusiasts. It's a way to check in with me and Sheila Gunn-Reid and Drea Humphrey and David Menzies. Tons of Rebels are on the trip, and at the end of the day, it's a way to keep Rebel News strong because there's a little extra added to the cost, which is how we float the boat here at Rebel News. It's a fundraiser. Here's the next Rebel News cruise in case you've always wanted to go on one. It sets sail out of Vancouver June 18th, 2025. It's a week-long, June 18 to 2025, and it's Vancouver to Alaska. So it's a lot easier to get to than a Caribbean cruise where you have to fly to Florida to set sail. Starts in Vancouver, where I'll greet you, Sheila, David, Alexa Lavoie, Drea Humphrey. It's a super fun trip. I've done it before. We go to Skagway, which is where the gold rush started. We go to Glacier National Park, which is as beautiful as it sounds. Go to rebelnewscruise.com to learn more, to check the pricing, and to book your cabin. Just let me rattle off some of the details of the places we're going. It's called the Alaska Inside Passage Cruise. If you know what that means, you go up right along the coast. It's on Holland America, so it's nice. It's the MS Zandam. That's the name of the ship. Obviously, we start off in Vancouver, next the Tracy Arm Inlet, then Juneau, the capital of Alaska, Skagway, by far my favorite city. It's amazing. Then Glacier Bay. Maybe the most beautiful place I've ever been in my life. back to Ketchikan, and then down to Vancouver. If you like cruising, this is a super way to do it with fellow travelers, ideologically speaking. If you've never cruised before, this is a great way to start. And if you've been on Rebel News cruises, well, you don't want to miss this one. Again, for details, go to rebelnewscruise.com. It's next June, so just under a year away, but not too soon, to order and to get the early bird discount. I'll see you at sea.